Well, hello, everybody. Now we are live on all of our formats. And here it is. It's Friday. And by the way, it's Friday, in case you don't know. So that means it's Paranormal Fridays today. And we're going to have a very interesting conversation today. I'm really looking forward to this. I really am. Because, we'll talk about the topic in a second. But let's get through the business aspect of the show, and then we're going to get right into the meat and potatoes of it, because I think you'll enjoy this. It's one of my favorite topics because it goes deep in the mind, and we'll talk about that in just a second. So first of all, I'm Bishop James Long. Thank you so much for being here. This is the Sacred Division Paranormal Show. I've been doing this since 2003, 20 years. Whew, it's a long time. Now, first of all, I want you to go to this website. It's kgradb.com. Again, the website is kgradb.com. And I want you to check out, folks, make sure you subscribe, but put Bishop as your promo code, because you're going to get 30% off your subscription. You know that by now. For those of you who follow me, you pretty much know that's truly, it is a great program. It really is. It's a great network. And they have some terrific shows there. Matter of fact, the Sacred Division airs there as well. So again, kgradb.com. Now that is the wonderful website, Bishop as your promo code. If you want to go to my website, real simple, bishopjameslong.com. That's it, bishopjameslong.com. Very, very easy. I want to remind everybody that tonight we do have night prayer at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And that's very simple. How do you go there, Bishop Long? Well, let me tell you. You just go to bishopjameslong.com, scroll all the way down to the bottom where it says night prayer. It's right there. And all you got to do is click the picture and it takes you right to Spreaker. That's all you have to do. And then finally, I want you to go to the church's website. Now, a lot of people always ask about the church. The church. Okay. It's usocc.org. That's the name of the church. That's the website. So there you go. And check that out. And I'm sure you're going to... There's a frequently asked questions there. People are always asking about the difference between the churches. And we'll just head on over there. We have the frequently asked questions section. Thank you very much there, Jax. And so I think, hey, there you go. All right. Today, we have, of course, we've had Easter. So, we've kind of kicked back a little bit from the paranormal, obviously, because of Easter and out of respect for the holiday. And a special week. I mean, it's a holy week. So I just thought it was irresponsible to do, ghosts, goblins, and ghouls and demons and all this during Holy Week. I just thought that was irresponsible. However, now we're back in the saddle. So whatever you're doing, I hope that you're going to have a fantastic weekend. If you have nothing planned, that's fine. Then at least do something for yourself. There you go. Just do something for yourself. And, hey, you know what? Life is tough. Life is really hard, and you do something special, whatever it is. If you take some time and go out for a walk, or whatever you need to kind of get away from all the craziness, whatever you need to do, as long as it's not going to hurt you. You don't want to do anything like that, but it's important. It really is important. Let me just remind you: you deserve the same love that you give to everyone else. And I want you to understand that you truly do. You deserve the same love you give to everyone else. And that should be non-negotiable. Non-negotiable. And because you deserve that. I mean, so many of us give and give and give and give, and that's fine. But you also have to remember, you have to give to yourself too. And you're right, Leslie, that's absolutely correct. It's just self-care is important. Well, thank you very much there, Seamus. I appreciate that. And I thank you for everybody being here. Okay, so tonight, we're going to talk about a topic that I think a lot of people find it very interesting because it scares people. And I get it. But what I like to do is, when I deal with people who do terrible things, I like to try to understand it from a psychological perspective. Now, I'm not a psychologist. Thankfully, when I was at Loyola, I took psychology classes, but I'm certainly not a psychologist. But I studied this one particular topic when I was at Loyola. And it has always just grabbed my attention because I think to myself, we immediately want to think serial killers, possession. I mean, a lot of people think that. A lot of people say, if you're a serial killer, you must be possessed. And I've so many people have asked me, do you think John Wayne Gacy was possessed? Do you think Dahmer was possessed? Do you think Ted Bundy was possessed? Eileen Wuornos? I mean, there's a lot of people who ask me, do I believe these people were possessed? Well, we'll talk about that in just a second. But I got to tell you something. Certainly what these people did was animalistic, is barbaric, and we all know. The serial killers is one of those topics. I think, let me just say this. I've been to a lot of locations that have demonic infestation. I've been to a lot of locations that have malevolent spirits. I've been to a lot of locations that have poltergeist activity. I've been to 30 exorcisms. But I got to tell you one, sitting across the table when I was in the seminary from an individual who was a serial killer, and talking to this individual, I'll never, ever forget it. I'll never, ever, ever forget that conversation. This man did some terrible things. I mean, we're talking terrible things, as all serial killers do. But there was other things that he did after obviously the killing of the person. It was god awful. And when I taught, of course, I was a seminarian, so I went with a priest there that was mentoring me at the time. And when we went there, we would, just asking how you doing, and are you okay? Do you need anything? You need us to pray for you? That kind of thing. But he would talk about his what he did. And I'm not allowed to say who it is because obviously it wasn't under the old Catholic Church, as the United States Roman Catholic Church. But he described in detail what he did. And he just went right into the conversation. And I've talked about this before. The way he described what he did, there was no emotion. There was no emotion. It was stoic beyond belief. It was very robotic. It really truly was as if he was like giving you a step-by-step instruction on how to make a peanut butter jelly sandwich. I mean, it was that was it. There was no, and I watched for it. I watched for the grimaces, maybe in his face or his body movement or something, that when he reflected on the things that he did, I was confident there was going to be something. There was going to be something. There was going to be some type of reaction. There wasn't. There was no reaction. And the only time that he ever reacted is when we kind of talked about the fulfillment he received in doing the things that he did. That was the only time he was animated. And it wasn't really, when I say animated, there was expression, but it wasn't extreme expression. It wasn't like, oh, I'm going to Disney World, woohoo! But it wasn't like that. But it was almost delightful. He took delight in it. Obviously, that's something that I can't understand. I can't comprehend, and I think most people can't. So let's talk about. I'm going to get into the psychological profile of a serial killer, and we're going to talk about some of the things that for my classes at Loyola that I still have all my notes. So I kind of wrote down the notes. I said I'm going to present this to you guys because I think. Here's what I'm going to say. I have a friend who is in another state, and I'll just say Illinois. This person is a police, actually, the detective. He was a police officer for 20 years. There appears to be a very good chance in Illinois that there might be another serial killer. There are, of course, I can't go into, obviously, I'm not allowed to go into information, but there seems to be a pattern. So right now, what happened to be men. So my advice to anybody, if you're a young man, you need to be very careful in the Chicago area. So there's something going on there. There's something going on. There's a pattern. And so obviously they're not going to release information, but something is happening. I don't know if it's another John Wayne Gacy. I don't know. But there's something Yeah, so you're from Illinois. So there's something going on. Okay, so let's talk about the psychological profile of a serial killer. A serial killer is a person who murders 3 or more people over like a period of time, usually more than 30 days. So they usually have what's also called a cooling off period between each of the murder. There's a difference between a serial killer and a mass murderer. A mass murderer is an individual who kills a lot of people at once. A serial killer is an individual who has this extreme compulsion. I mean, the compulsion that is so extreme, it's far exceeding any type of compulsion you may have. Let's say that you have a compulsion for alcohol or chocolate or whatever it is, or nicotine, whatever it is. Now multiply that times 100. It absorbs your mind, your psyche, everything within the person. It becomes truly almost like a obsession. But there's a cooling off period, usually, not all the time, between each victim. And again, the cooling off period could be a day, 2, 3, whatever it might be. The motivation for killing is largely based on psychological gratification. And there's a lot of gratification that we're going to talk about here. Often there is a sexual element that is involved when the killings. And obviously, let me just say, before we get into the heart and meat and potatoes of this, I don't think this would be appropriate for, small children. I'm not going to go into detail, but you get it. This is a scary topic. And I did advertise it so people are aware that this is what I'm going to be talking about today. The murders may have been attempted or completed in a similar fashion, and the victims may have had something in common, like, for example, occupation or race, appearance, sex, sexual orientation, age group, and in some cases, social economic conditions. Now, the characteristics, according to the FBI, of a serial killer, usually, this is why Eileen Wuornos was so unique. But usually the serial killer is single white males. Most of the time, they're intelligent. They have employment difficulties from time to time. They do have an unstable family history. There have been many cases where serial killers have talked about they've been abandoned by their fathers or raised by their mothers or even severely abused by the fathers. They have sometimes criminal, psychiatric, and alcoholic histories. Again, there's abuse histories there. They have high rates of attempted suicide. There is apparently a pattern of voyeurism or sadomasochism, pornography. There's also, which is very interesting, that many people don't know, there is a history with some serial killers of bedwetting. Now, the bedwetting as a child, the bedwetting can be explained through having obviously trauma. Some are fascinated with fires for the destruction and control, and others are sadistic. And many of them torture small animals. Now, we know Jeffrey Dahmer, the story of Jeffrey Dahmer. We'll get to Jeffrey Dahmer and some other ones in just a second. Psychosis is rarely noted, which is interesting among serial killers. The diagnosis with serial killers usually is psychopath. And yeah, you're right. And even Ted Bundy volunteered at a suicide hotline place. Right. Yeah. Yeah. Jeff didn't play people of his same race. Yeah, and of course, Dahmer. But we'll get to the specifics in just a second. They suffer from traits within a specific cluster of dysfunctional personality characteristics. Those most associated with antisocial personality disorder or dissocial personality disorder. Psychopaths, in the serial killer perspective, they lack empathy or guilt. John Wayne Gacy, when he did an interview with the individuals about his murder, he just simply said, "Yeah, I just once I killed them, I just kind of discarded them, and then that was somebody else's problem." I mean, it was just like throwing trash out. I mean, really, there was no regard for human life. There was no regard for the remains at all. I mean, he was very just cold, calculated. Yeah, once I'm I dig that hole and I throw them in there. That's it. Not my problem anymore. They're egocentric many times and very impulsive. They don't conform to social, moral, or legal norms most of the time. And again, this is from the FBI. They often follow a distinct set of rules which they have created themselves. And sometimes they appear to be very normal and quite often charming. We know that John Wayne Gacy was highly respected in his community. I mean, he was in politics. He even met the first lady during the time. He was big into the Democrat Party. I mean, the JCs, and he threw all kinds of parties and people. And he was a clown, of course. People liked him a lot, but there was something obviously that people did not know. We'll talk about that in just a second. There, Lost Wolf. I don't want to get ahead of myself. I'll get there. I promise you. So these are the type of serial killers that you need to be aware of. According to the FBI, there are organized serial killers and there are disorganized serial killers. Like the organized serial killers they usually have above average intelligence. They're very methodological. They don't just kind of throw things together. There's a method. They lure victims. They maintain control over the crime scene. They follow the crimes in the media. But they're usually socially adequate. Now, disorganized serial killers, they have low intelligence. They're impulsive. They murder when the opportunity arises. There's not really a methodology behind it. That just whenever it happens, it happens. They rarely dispose of the body, usually leaving the body where they found it. And many times they're introverted. Now, again, don't say, oh my gosh, I'm introverted. I must be. No. You have to understand there's a huge psychological profile that goes with profiling a serial killer. What's interesting is approximately there are 400 serial killers in the United States in the past century. Did you know that? I mean, most of us have heard about just a handful of them, but actually there's 400 serial killers in the United States in the past century, with anywhere from 2,500 victims to 3,800 victims. And what's really scary, I want you to think about this. There are between 50 to 3, and this is from the FBI, there are between 50 and 300 serial killers are active at any point in time. That is crazy. That is insanity. Now, serial murders have increased over the past 30 years. Here's what's interesting statistic. 80% of the 400 of the past century have emerged since 1950. Now, let that sink in for just a second. Now, there are theories as to why that is. And that primarily you got DNA, you have better technology to determine and to catch someone. So there are arguments that says, well, now hold on, yes, that would make sense in 1950 because we have DNA, we have other, technology where we can kind of narrow down the search, computers and things of this nature. But we do know, according to 80% of the 400 in the past century have occurred since 1950. These are because of the FBI statistics. So let's talk about the motives. Again, the information that I'm presenting to you is information that I received when I was studying at Loyola University in psychology, when I studied serial killers, and also it comes from the FBI. So I wanted to make sure I presented the most accurate information as I possibly could. That way you can have it for your own information. So let's talk about the motives, because there are several types of motives here. There's a visionary motive type. So a visionary motive type would be insane, psychotic, compelled to murder by entities such as the devil, like devil mandated, or even, folks, even God mandated. There are serial killers who have said that they were told by God to do this. And that's the type of motive would be because visionary. So either the devil tells them to do it or God tells them to do it. Then there's called a mission-oriented type of motive, and that displays no psychosis. They believe they need to rid of the world of what they consider immoral or unworthy. Often the victims are prostitutes, young women, gay men, etc. So they believe they're doing an actual good thing for the betterment of society. That person would have what is called an erroneous conscience. An erroneous conscience is a person who believes doing evil is actually good. They truly believe doing this is good. And that's erroneous conscience. And then there is the last part is hedonistic. A hedonistic motive. It actually derives pleasure from killing. And these are the type of motives like, for example, lust or thrill or even comfort. Also, there is what's called the power control type. And the objective is to gain power or control over the victim. And often these killers are abused as children, which results in them feeling powerless and inadequate as adults. So many of these killers sexually abuse their victims to gain control over them, not for sexual gratification, but just control. Now, can you have several motives within one serial killer? Yes, you can. And then, and also, believe it or not, another motive would be medical professionals. Now, people say, what do you mean? Well, these killers are often referred to as angels of death. They're often involved in fraud. And they, for example, there was one individual who worked at a hospital and people were dying. And so in his mind, he thought it would be best to help the person along so they won't suffer. And so they would inject in their IV solution, they would inject a diabetes medicine in which the person didn't have diabetes. And the people obviously died from that injection. So, or even Dr. Jack Kevorkian. There are many people that consider Dr. Jack Kevorkian a serial killer. Yeah, mercy killing. That's right. Yeah, mercy killing. Now let's continue to talk about motives as well. There's a lust serial killer, and that obviously sex is the primary motive, and fantasy plays a large role in their killings. Sexual gratification depends on the amount of torture and mutilation they perform on the victims. They tend to use weapons that require close contact with the victim. This is all terrifying, but this is not something that they're not going to shoot someone from a long distance. They want to be up close and personal. There is a thrill serial killer. Then their primary goal is to inflict pain or create terror in the victims. The victims often are strangers who the killer may have stalked for a period of time. And what's interesting is these killers can go for long periods of time without killing. So they have a cooling off time or period. And then, of course, there is the comfort or profit. There's a material gain. Extravagant lifestyles are primary motives. The victims are usually close acquaintances or family members. Female serial killers are often this type. But there's also other. There's Andrew Cunanan, who killed. It was comfort, profit, but there was also some other issues with Andrew Cunanan. He actually killed Versace, but he got into relationships with very, very wealthy men, and he wanted their life. He wanted what they had, and he actually thought he was entitled to it. Not only did he want it, but he thought he was entitled to it. And so he went on a terrible killing spree. And it's the killing of Versace. I think they did a show on that. Really good. It's a really intense show. The Boston Strangler. So lust serial killers. Let's look at this. This is from Holmes and Holmes from 2002 study. A lust murder is the commission of a sexual killing and is distinct subcategory of homicide. A homicide in which the offender searches for sexual satisfaction by killing someone. Now, commonly this type of crime is manifested either by murdering during sexual relations and or mutilating the private parts of the victim's body. Jeffrey Dahmer. Mutilation of the victims may include, you get the point. We're not going to go into details. Now, when you're talking about fantasy system of lust serial killers, the common themes found within these fantasies in the presence of power, domination, molestation, revenge, and really sometimes even the desire to degrade and humiliate others. Each time, and it's terrible. And each time this fantasy is acted upon, it increases the level of sadistic deviance. So and increases the desire for increased violence. So when you're dealing with the lust serial killer, especially if they have domination or they want to control and manipulate, they will kill someone, and then that creates this adrenaline, but they have to one up it. Otherwise, it's the same adrenaline, and they don't want that. They want an increase. So they might, in the first serial killer, they might just incorporate rope into it and torture the person. Then they have rope, and then they have handcuffs, and then the next is handcuffs, rope, and something else. So you're seeing an increase because it gives them the desire that they need, which is quite serious. We'll talk about that in just a second. Right now, we're talking about serial killers. Now, what's interesting about the lust serial killers' early childhood, when you get deep into the childhood for lust serial killers, there's a notion of a lost childhood. And there's a Hickey, an author, Hickey, in 2001, indicated that traumatic pre-adolescent events, a lack of structure and support from the home, environmental, they fuel these sexual fantasies. And then research specifically indicates that sexual murders are created within early childhood development, particularly before the age of 5. So I'm not going to go into, because I don't know if kids are watching, so we're not going to go into specifics because it's pretty intense as far as the lust serial killers. But I think you guys can get that. Most of the time, when you're dealing with lust serial killer, it usually includes strangulation, blunt force, and even stabbing with a sharp instrument. Remember, it's up close and personal. It's uncommon for the offender to rely on a firearm. It's too fast. As insane as it sounds, it's too fast for them. They want it prolonged. The torture needs to be prolonged. And obviously using a firearm, now, of course, again, depending on where you shoot the person, but even then, the person could bleed out very quickly. So that's too fast for them. They want to inflict the pain, not a bullet. Because you have to remember, if a person who has a lust serial killer does not rely on a firearm because it takes away from the psychosexual gratification, it's considered impersonal. How sick that is. And again, for those of you who are just joining us, we're talking about the psychological aspects. We're diving deep into the psychological brain and the psyche of a serial killer. So this is an intense conversation. I realize that. The most common sadistic act committed by the offender includes burning certain parts of the body, electrocution, and body dismemberment. So this is why this is why I don't understand why people worship almost serial killers. I don't understand that. Yes, there are serial killers on death row. So, but there are. I mean, so for example, Jeffrey Dahmer. We know Jeffrey Dahmer. He had 17 victims, and his reign of terror. Listen to this now. Think about this. Let this sink in for a moment. Do you realize Jeffrey Dahmer? His reign of terror lasted from 1978 to 1991. That is a long time. 1978 is when he first had his first killing to 1991. Obviously, necrophilia and cannibalism was what his motive was. and he preferred drugging and then strangulation. He was sentenced to 937 years. Obviously, we know that he was killed. What was interesting about Jeffrey Dahmer, when you go into the psychological profile of Jeffrey Dahmer, he began dissecting animals as a child. So he would find animals that were hit by a car or something, and he would take them, and then he would dissect them. He told a psychologist once that he liked the colors inside of the body. He just liked the different colors. He killed one man and then waited 10 years before he killed again. He was on probation for about a year for exposing himself and doing a sexual act on himself in front of two 12-year-old boys. So he spent time in gay bars, and he would strike up a conversation with men, and then he would drug their drinks. He did not kill these men at this time. He was just experimenting. Now, he killed his second victim after having relations with him at a hotel, and Dahmer was intoxicated and didn't remember killing him. So for him, as he said, sex, companionship, and death were linked together in his head. Dahmer, he was arrested, by the way. He was charged with sexual assault, enticing a minor for immoral purposes. He served a week in jail and 5 years of probation. So then what Dahmer would do later is he would begin to obviously drug his victims again, strangle them, have relations with their body after they had passed on. And you know that Dahmer had kept parts of his victim as souvenirs. And yeah, he consumed them. And he began to use acid as a means of disposing of his victims' bodies. He then used a refrigerator to preserve them. There were human heads, a filing cabinet to store grotesque pictures, and use pots to remove the victims' flesh from the bones. It's terrible. One other victims escaped from Dahmer's apartment. He was able to contact police, which obviously led to the capture of Dahmer. And Dahmer was convicted, and he was murdered by a mentally disordered offender while in prison. And it was a very violent attack. There's another individual that you may not know, David Ray Parker. David Ray Parker, a lot of people don't know about him. He had 14 to 60 victims. We just simply don't know. And his actually reign of terror, listen to this, started in the 1950s and lasted until 1999. That's unbelievable. 49 years. You're right. And Dahmer tried drilling heads, holes in their head, because he wanted to keep them alive. He wanted to make them zombies. Dahmer had a severe detachment. He also had abandonment issues from his family. And so his idea, his words were, killing was a means to an end. He really didn't want, it wasn't the enjoyment of killing. He wanted to keep them there. He wanted to control them and not let them leave. And so, yeah, he would drill, holes in their heads and put acid in there, thinking that was going to be a way to make them a zombie. But David Ray Parker, his motive is sadism, sex slavery, and murder. And he strangled his victims. He was sentenced to 224 years. And for those of you who don't know about David Ray Parker, he tortured and killed his victims in a homemade $100,000 torture chamber. You have to look this guy up. I mean, if you're interested in serial killers and their motives and the psychological aspects of it, David Ray Parker, he had a $100,000 torture chamber. He called this torture a toy box. That's what he called it. It contained whips, chains, pulleys, straps, clamps, legs, bars, and surgical blades, saws. It was terrible. There were also sex-related objects, torture implements, detailed diagrams showing different methods of inflicting pain. There was an electronic generating device that was used to torture. At the 12-volt motorized. I'm not. You'll just have to do your research on it. His daughter actually was convicted of kidnapping one of his victims, and his live-in girlfriend was known to be the victim of as mistress. Now, Parker was caught when one of his victims escaped after being kidnapped and tortured for 3 days. He died 8 months after sentencing. Richard Chase, he had 6 victims. It was 1 month in 1977. Richard Chase was charged with cannibalism and drinking the victim's blood and necrophilia. And his method was shooting. And he was sentenced to death. Now, he was a victim of abuse at the hands of his mother. He exhibited symptoms of there's a sociopathic behavior, animal cruelty, fire setting, persistent bedwetting. Chase captured, killed, and disemboweled various animals, which he would then eat raw, and would also mix raw organs with Coca-Cola in a blender and consume it. He actually believed that by ingesting the animals, it would prevent his heart from shrinking. This is terrifying. If you really think about this, this is terrifying, knowing that there are people out there like this. He was voluntarily committed to a mental institution after being taken to the hospital for blood poisoning, which he contracted from injecting rabbit's blood into his veins. He was diagnosed with paranoid schizophrenia, was treated with the psychotropic drugs, and was deemed to be no longer to be a threat to society. He was released in 1967. And so after killing his second victim, who was pregnant, Chase had relations with the corpse, mutilated, and bathed in the woman's blood. Chase engaged in necrophilia and cannibalism with all his female victims. At his last crime scene, he kidnapped a 6-year-old girl. And he killed her. He drank her blood. He consumed her organs before disposing her body at a local church. Again, I understand people, it's like, wow, this is intense. It is intense. But I told you in the beginning, this is going to be an intense presentation. So I understand if this is too much, but this is the world that we live in, guys. By the way, Chase was found guilty on 6 counts of first-degree murder. The jury rejected the argument of not guilty by reason of insanity. He was sentenced to death. Chase's fellow inmates apparently feared him after finding out the graphic and bizarre details of his crimes, and they often try to convince Chase to commit suicide. On December 26, 1980, Chase was found dead in his cell. He committed suicide from ingesting a large amount of antidepressants, which he hoarded in his cell. I mean, this, man, and you think that's bad? I have a lot more left, guys. Look, I'm not here to frighten you. I'm just here to let you know that you need to be aware. And I'm telling you, if you're in the Chicago area, and if you are a young male, you need to be aware that there's something going on in Chicago. Now, of course, right now, Chicago is just very, very violent, period. But, which is a shame because, that's where I went to school. But there are young men that are disappearing in Chicago. So if any of you have loved ones in Chicago, if you have LGBT members in Chicago who are young men, they need to be very, very aware of their surroundings. Very aware of their surroundings. So it's a dangerous situation right now. So let's talk about some of the traits of. We talked about several things: lack of empathy, lack of remorse. Some are impulsive. Many times they have a grandiose, like John Wayne Gacy had a grandiose narcissistic personality disorder. I mean, he was extremely narcissistic. People would describe him of having a superficial charm. I mean, the charm he could really, and manipulation. There's an addictive personality, a lust for power, sensation seeking. Let's talk about the lack of empathy. One of the most common characteristics of a serial killer is a lack of emotional depth. So we're talking about empathy. It's impossible to be empathic towards someone and still carry out a premeditated homicide on them. The trait is common in both sociopaths and psychopaths, and therefore present in the majority of serial killers. What's very interesting, though, this isn't to say that a serial killer will lack empathy for absolutely everything and everyone. It's completely possible for a serial killer to show empathy towards another human being, although that human being rarely becomes one of their victims. In the case of John Wayne Gacy, he had an individual that he was going to kill. And what Gacy would do is he would lure young men to his home, and then he would put handcuffs on himself, and he would turn around, and then the handcuffs would off. He says, ta-da, he said, I'll show you the magic trick here. Let me put the handcuffs on you. And then he put the handcuffs on the person. And the person said, okay, I don't know how you did it. Just take the handcuffs off of me. And then Gacy's entire demeanor changed. And this was from a person who survived one of his attacks. Everything changed. His eyes changed, his demeanor changed, everything. And that's when he began to torture this victim. Terrible. I mean, he did a tourniquet around his throat and would tighten it. Well, and just torture this young man. Well, apparently the torture was so severe. He just said, please, this young man said, please just kill me. Just kill me. This is too much. This is too much. I can't handle this anymore. And then this young man began talking about his childhood, about how his father abused him and how he was horrible to him and he had a rough life. Well, what's interesting is Gacy's father was very violent, very physically and verbally violent towards Gacy. That somehow snapped him out of that trance, if you will. And Gacy then showed empathy by letting him go. So that he's one of the very few people who actually survived Gacy's wrath. So there are very rare instances, but it's who they show empathy towards is it depends on the person. It's completely possible, like I said, to show empathy towards someone and not like family. A number of studies have shown that serial killers will be fully aware of the victim's distress, but they just won't feel it themselves because the urge to control, kill, whatever is so overwhelming. So, for example, there have been a number of serial killers throughout the years who adored their pets, like Dennis Nelson, John Wayne Gacy, Harold Chipman. Were all dog lovers. The most bizarre entry in this category may be Jeffrey Dahmer, who actually happily, he decapitated local dogs he found in his street, but yet he actually had a dog. He had a dog named a Spaniel, and the dog's name was Frisky. He would never hurt Frisky, never hurt him. So it's interesting how they were able to compartmentalize empathy towards one thing or one person, one animal, and not the other. It really is. If you think about it, it's fascinating. There is a lack of remorse, though. This goes hand in hand with with empathy. Once again, a serial killer will rarely feel remorse for the victims. If they did, they wouldn't have earned themselves serial killer. Many serial killers have vocally opposed this trait, some claiming that they learned to feel remorse after a significant time has passed. Some people believe this. I just don't. I think that's just a manipulation tactic. I just don't believe it. Psychologists and researchers into the criminal mind really claim that on a whole, serial killers do not feel remorse. They just don't. Many, like I said, they're impulsive. And this one is both yes and no, but it is present enough to serial killers. So many killers over the years have said, I wanted to stop, but I couldn't. Dennis Nelson said he didn't want to kill, but he had no other choice. Tommy Linsell said that when he saw a woman walking alone at night, he couldn't control his urges to follow her. William Herons once scrawled the words, for heaven's sake, catch me before I kill more. I cannot control myself, on the wall of the victim's bedroom. That's what he actually. Eileen Wuornos, she was a female serial killer who impulsively killed many of her clients while in a car. With this said, it's mostly a disorganized with her situation. Ed Kemper, he describes in a video you can watch on YouTube, he describes how impulsive and out of control he became. Ed Kemper. And this guy was, terrifying. A BTK killer was known to spend weeks and months watching his victims and learning their routines before attacking them. There's also a grandiosity. Most serial killers love to boast about their accomplishments. A lot of them see themselves as above the law and smarter than everyone else. Dennis Rader, the BTK killer, showed no empathy in court. Jack the Ripper, the Zodiac killer, BTK, all these killers, they taunted police and press with letters and messages, and it's pretty intense what they do. Many of them are narcissistic. And John Wayne Gacy is probably the most extreme narcissist, and superficial charm goes along with it. Ted Bundy. I mean, a lot of people talk about, when you're talking about superficial charm, people have talked about Ted Bundy like he could just charm anybody. Even the judge at his hearing said, if you just, I would have loved for you to practice law in front of me. You're very bright. I mean, just all kinds of great compliments. It's like, my goodness. Now, Charles Manson. I know some of you are going to say, well, Charlie Manson didn't kill anybody. Okay, hold on. Charles Manson may not have been physically appealing, but he had enough charisma to convince a whole group of people to kill for him. And I'm telling you, the people who killed have given interviews, and they said they would have never killed if Charlie had not told them to do it. And Charlie, of course, goes on and on and on. He went on and on. I didn't tell anybody. Well, I don't know about that. Absolutely, Jason. Manipulation. We talked about that as well. They have an addictive personality. These people are not, and it goes on and on and on. These people are master manipulators. And certainly the person that I spoke to when I went to prison, I could see why people would be manipulated by him. Because when he talked about the crime, there was no emotion. Or crimes, there was no emotion. But then if you got him to talking about a topic like sports, he could just, if you love sports, I guarantee it. If you sat across from this man, you probably say, hey, man, you're pretty cool. Let's hang out. I mean, he was just that type of guy. But then that's the only time that I actually saw emotion is when he talked about sports and things that he really enjoyed. But when it came, it was like a light. It was the strangest thing. It was like a light bulb just went just like this. As soon as you talked about the crime, it was just robotic. How he was able to compartmentalize using emotion, talking about sports, and then going from sports and emotional to stoic and his crime. It was eerie. It was very, very, it was just strange. Now, there are phases that many people don't know about this. There's 7 psychological phases when you're talking about serial killers. So let's talk about the first one. The first one is called the aura phase. The aura phase, the person begins to put out a distance between himself or herself and social relations. To a certain extent, they begin to drift away from reality. And sometimes the situation can go unnoticed by family and friends. It continues on for an unpredictable short or long periods of time. Fantastic thoughts begin to gain weight. In most cases, these thoughts manifest themselves as violent sexual thoughts or other violent fantasies. And again, in the person, the use of substance in this process may intensify, like the use of alcohol, what Jeffrey Dahmer did. Then the next phase will be called the trolling phase. And this phase usually involves the process of forming an idea about the space of potential victims. So usually serial killers go through the process of searching for victims where they know or feel comfortable. However, there's also a tendency to determine where they will commit the crime and then maybe have to deal with the body. And this quest could take days or even months until the right candidate is found. Jeffrey Dahmer did this in an individual who loved to jog in his home where he grew up. And many times Dahmer had talked about how he fantasized and how he would do it and what it would look like and how he would take a bat and hit the person's knee and then describe the act. He, in his mind, he manifested this. He thought about it. Everything from hiding in the bushes to the bat, how he's going to hold the bat, where he's going to hit the jogger, and then the next process. And he actually went to the bushes because he was going to kill this jogger. But the jogger didn't run in that area that day. So Dahmer got in the car and was driving around, and he found an individual instead. There's also what's called the flirting phase. And in the flirting phase, the serial killer is focused on gaining the trust sometimes of the victim. Typically, this phase is used by more daring, planned, socially developed killers. The killer tries to socialize with the victim and gain the trust. And then the serial killer takes the victim to a quiet and previously planned area and takes action. The next phase is called the capturing phase. As the name suggests, it's the phase in which the killer fully reveals his true intentions. And the methods used in the capturing phase can again be selected in such a way that the killers can enjoy the action more. The next phase, you have what's called the murdering phase. Obviously, the killer performs a ritual in his own way or her own way. Sometimes it can be accompanied by prolonged torture and necrophilia, sometimes leading to sudden death. Torture before killing and post-mortem sexual relations is a common ritual, especially if you're sadistic killers. Now, organized killers often adopt a longer period of torture and death. The killer can enjoy preceding torture and post-mortem relations more than the murder itself. And then you have what's called the totem phase. So after a murder and other actions in this phase, the killer experiences a huge decline. They kind of wake up from this fantasy. In fact, these ups and downs are said to be the key driving force of the killer to develop a ritual. So at this point, the reception of the souvenirs from the victim is very common. That's why a lot of serial killers will take a souvenir from the crime scene. It is common to use memories such as clothing or a piece of body, photos, videos, jewelry. And the purpose of the souvenir is to get rid of the fall they experience by repeatedly remembering the moment of murder and the ritual. Isn't that intense? This is why they get souvenirs, if you will. And then you have what's called the depression stage. So in the final phase, the killer tends to decide his next murder because the killer experiences a major emotional breakdown. This collapse can take days, weeks, even months. Sometimes the killer compares the way they committed the crime to the murders in television movies and feels dissatisfaction. The depression phase is so intense that sometimes the killer can't even feel the strength to commit suicide. But after a while, the killer returns to the fantasy and starts the murder cycle again. And this motion always leads the killer to become more violent, more professional. And a killer can feel the need to make improvements in their rituals, which often happens. And the process continues until they're caught or committed suicide. Serial murder is it's an addiction. It's that extreme adrenaline rush. And then when the token that they receive from the crime doesn't fulfill the fantasy anymore or the depression stage, then they have to kill again. I did a documentary and when I'm able to talk about this, I'll be able to. I did a documentary on an individual who committed a crime, a terrible crime against his family. My God, the things this person did. So I did a documentary with them, and I've talked to the executive producer about the possibility of flying down to this state to meet up with this person. I don't know if that's going to happen, but I certainly would love, because there is an alleged possibility, of the claim of demonic. I don't know. We'll have to see. So, but the murder was unbelievable, and completely out of character. Totally. I mean, we're talking a total change in character. It's you go from a saint to a demon in the matter of seconds. I mean, it was insane. So if I do get to fly down to this location, I'll let you guys know. But yeah, we'll see about that. I do encourage you. There is a show. If you, I like to, for me, I like to study the mind. I've always been fascinated with the mind. And when you're talking about serial killers, obviously you have to get into the psyche. There's a fantastic show on Netflix. I will tell you, it is adult oriented. So I'm giving you that heads up right now. It's called Mind Hunter. Mind Hunter. Mind Hunter. One word. The guy who played Edward Kemper. My gosh. Intense. I mean, the way this character, Cameron Brighton, I think, portrays this Edward Kemper. But man, he did a phenomenal job. I when you watch this scene with the FBI agents, it is intense. And the thing is he comes across as very charming, unbelievably charming, and kind, and intelligent, articulate, soft-spoken. But my God, the thing, and this is based on a true character. This is based on a true character. What he did, unspeakable, unthinkable. I mean, it just, you got to be, there's no way. There's no way. Folks, I'm telling you, this will blow your mind. And it will, but you got to be prepared for it. And you have to understand that there are very dangerous people in this world. And he was one of them. He is one of them. My gosh. They canceled it? That is stupid. Oh, that's Netflix canceled it. Dumb. Well, that makes me mad because my gosh, they could have gone to Dahmer. They could have gone to Gacy. There's so many that they could. Eileen Wuornos. They could have gone. I mean, years. That is stupid. Truly stupid. Shame. Netflix. I tell you what, whoever the executive producers or the owners of Netflix, they need to, I don't know, someone needs to actually talk to them and say, what, you guys just missed the boat on this one. Dumb. But that was stupid that they canceled it. It really is one of the best shows, I think, no doubt, when it comes to serial killers, because they go deep into the psychological profiling of serial killers. But just take a look at it if you are interested. I can't post up, girl. You can send me something on Facebook. I have over now 13 messages on TikTok, so I can't. So just send me a message on Facebook. It's called Mind Hunter. All one word. There's a book called Mind Hunter. Well, thank you there, John. There's a book called Mind Hunter. Is it? Okay, well, we'll see. But anyway, Mind Hunter is the place that you need to check that. Okay. Well, anyway, I don't know. I'm trying to see if there's a book. Okay. Well, okay. Yeah, just send me a message on Facebook. So there is a book. What is the book called? Yeah, I've read a lot of books. I've read when I was studying in college, I read a lot of books, but I need to know what the name of the book is because so yeah, there's a lot of books on that. Okay, but it's called Mindhunter. So check it out. And I think if you do, you'll really enjoy. Oh, okay. So there is. Okay, it is a book. Okay. I mean, we all know Ted Bundy. He was a charmer. I mean, he was the kind of guy that made it easy for people to be swept into his web. So Ann Rule said, I liked him immediately, but people like Ted can fool you completely, said Ann Rule, the author of the best-selling the book Stranger Beside Me. It's about her experiences with Bundy, a man she considered a friend. She said, I've been a cop, had all the psychology, but his mask was perfect. I say that long acquaintance can help you know someone, but you can never really be for sure. Jack the Ripper, of course, we know Jack, he was egocentric, grandiose. There is there's another person called Joel Rifkin. Joel Rifkin. And so you can check him out as well if you're interested in this, in several killers. Of course, John Wayne Gacy. John Wayne Gacy refused. He didn't. He of course then said he didn't do it. At first, he admitted that he did. Then he said he didn't do it. But he refused to take responsibility for 28 the boys buried beneath his house, even though he also once said that Klaus can get away with murder. That's what he actually said to the police. There's many people believe that that Gacy probably killed much more than 28, much more. But it's pretty scary. It's terrible stuff. I mean, when you look at these serial killers, there are so many. There is so many that you can discuss. That it's concerning. I think it is. Or Ed Gein. Yeah, I mean Ed Gein. He was a terrible killer. Okay, so we can get into your questions, paranormal questions, if you want to. Yeah, I mean, and there's also, of course, Richard Kuklinski. I mean, that man. If you don't know about Richard Kuklinski is his name. He was. There are no words. No words. You can go on YouTube and you can look him up. It's called the show's called Mindhunter. But you can look up Richard Kuklinski, and especially go on YouTube. And there are several videos that he did, interviews that he did. This man was just pure evil. I mean, he was just evil. There was no emotion, nothing. And the way he describes some of the things he did. So let's talk about, the Iceman, yeah. So let's talk about the idea, are these serial killers possessed? I don't think so. No. And here's why. Usually there's premeditation. There is, most of the time they hide the bodies. So a person who is possessed or even mentally ill is not going to hide the bodies. They hide the bodies to get away with their crime. So and quite honestly, they remember it. They remember the incident. A person who's possessed does not remember being possessed. They have no memory of it. They remember what led up to possession, but as far as remembering the actual stage itself, they have no memory. They have no memory. Is it a genetic disorder? We simply don't know. Now, we've done brain scans of people who were serial killers, and the frontal lobe does show less activity than that of a person who would not go around to kill people. Something is different. Now, Dr. Marcel Fredericks, he was, I think he's probably passed on now, but he was a world leading sociologist, brilliant man. He created what's called the SCP module, Society, Cultural, Personality, the SCP module. So you can look him up if you like sociology, if you like psychology. Dr. Marcel Fredericks was my instructor. And he taught about that the individual, the person's psyche, the development of the person comes through and is created via the society, culture, personality. It certainly does make sense, because if a child is beaten or abused and have severe trauma like Gacy, would Gacy have been a serial killer if in fact his environment was different? See, that's $1 million question. If John Wayne Gacy had grown up in a family where they were loving, they were kind, they were not abusive physically or emotionally, they encouraged him. The question is would he have had that compulsion to murder? And I don't think so. I don't think so. I think there is something going on. Why do we block people? I don't block people. The moderators are blocking people on TikTok if they spam, if they curse, if they mention demonic names, if they're mean or aggressive to somebody. That's why we block people, and we should. Because, I mean, if someone wants to be mean or hateful, they can go someplace else. This is not the place for it. No, SCP module. Well, he called it the SCP module. That's how we were taught. Let me see if I can. I don't. It's been so long ago. I can't. Module. Dr. Marcel Fredericks. He was a brilliant man. There he is, right there. Oh, I guess he's still good. Wow, I think he's still there. So Dr. Marcel Fredericks, he has a PhD, sociology of healthcare, medical sociology, professionalization, socialization theory, stratification, and the family. So, I would encourage you to, if you're interested to get his books. Dr. Marcel Fredericks is a professor emeritus at Loyola University Sociology Department. He was a professor of sociology. He was for 50 years and director of the Office of Research and Medical Sociology of the Department of Sociology. He holds a postdoctorate from Harvard University Medical School. During his postdoctoral years of Harvard, Dr. Fredericks was a National Institute of Health Fellow. He was also appointed Research Associate in Pediatrics at Harvard Medical School and Research Associate in Medicine at the Children's Hospital for Medical Center. Fredericks holds a PhD from Loyola University Chicago. Woohoo! He received his high school certificate from the University of Cambridge, England, and matriculated from the University of London, England. So, check him out. I really think this is what he says. Personalities, that really is brilliant. Personalities act accordingly to the way they perceive themselves, the self-concept, and according to the way they perceive the social situation. Social situations are all forces acting upon the individual at any given moment, environment, and time. Woo. So, I was very, very, really lucky to have him as my instructor in sociology. So, Dr. Marcel Fredericks, SCP, just type in SCP module, Dr. Marcel Fredericks, and there we go. Okay. My theology. I was taught by the Benedictines and the Jesuits. And we also, at graduate school, we were taught by Bishop Bob Barron, or Bishop Robert Barron. He's a bishop now in the Roman Catholic Church. Brilliant theologian, brilliant philosopher. I don't know if there's anything he doesn't know when it comes to Catholicism, or certainly theology or philosophy. I mean, the man is just a walking encyclopedia. So Bishop Bob. It was Bishop Bob Barron. That it's hard to say Robert Barron, but I guess now that he's a bishop, I was lucky. I was lucky to have His Grace as an instructor. There was a show, I think, where they tried to study the brain of a serial killer. As a matter of fact, I believe John Wayne Gacy, I want to say Zach, I believe, has a part of the brain of Gacy in his museum, I believe. But for me, I would rather have the person alive and, having the brain scans and going into really deep understanding. That to me is important, so that we can figure out, we can hopefully maybe prevent it from happening again. I mean, again, I think that the $1 million question, or even Dahmer or Eileen Wuornos. What's interesting is when you look at it, Eileen Wuornos had a terrible childhood. Terrible. Was raped. Horrible. My God, what she went through was pure hell as a child. I mean, you really, if you don't know anything much about Eileen Wuornos, do yourself a favor and learn her story. It's terrible what she, and I'm not giving her a free pass for what she did. I'm just simply explaining. But even Gacy was traumatized. Wuornos was traumatized. Kemper was extremely traumatized. It seems like trauma, extreme. I mean, we're talking extreme trauma. That the brain just fractions. Okay. All right, so let's get into some of your questions then. If you have questions or you got ready to, so, but keep in mind, we do, absolutely, we have freedom of choice, but but you have to remember, if the brain has been truly fractured to the point where the trauma is so severe, then the brain doesn't know how to process that trauma, and it compartmentalizes the emotions. And many times, in some individuals, empathy, the front part of the frontal lobe, there is a disconnect. So a person, like, for example, who is a serial killer and who believes killing, and there have been killing gay men or killing prostitutes, in their mind, they believe that they're actually doing society a benefit. So in their mind, society owes them a thank you. That individual is so compulsed by their sickness that they have like I said, they have an erroneous conscience, and they truly believe that what they are doing is good. Now, in the case of Eileen Wuornos, that wasn't the situation. Eileen Wuornos just became a serial killer because, of course, she had trauma. No doubt she had trauma. I do believe that in a couple of her cases, especially the first case, I do believe she was raped. Absolutely, I believe she was raped. But I think there clearly are other cases where these men were not attacking her at all, and she got away with it, and she compartmentalized it, and then she went on a spree. So it's a terrible thing. But again, when you're dealing with psychology, you're dealing with psychosis, you're not dealing with someone who's thinking rationally. So you and I are thinking rationally. So the idea of murdering someone is just, there's no way. There's no way. I don't even like hurting. I don't even like killing bugs. I don't like bugs. But I'm not the type of person that loves to stomp on them. For me, if there's a bug, I try to put them up and throw them out, of the house. For me, I just don't like killing. But for them, they don't look, they objectify the individual. That is a means to an end, because it's so intense for them. What are your thoughts on 2 10-year-olds that murdered a 2-year-old in England? I don't know much about the case, but here's what I am going to say. I used to teach kids with behavior. I used to be certified in teaching kids with behavior and learning disabilities in the public school system. And I had kids in the middle school that were severely traumatized, as 4 or 5 years old, severely traumatized. And there were cases where I saw one kid just stomping the living daylights. I mean, literally stomping this kid's head into, the school's hallway, and that's probably, I don't know what it's made of, but it's obviously hard. It's not soft padding. And he was just stomping this kid. I mean, he was going to stomp this kid's head. He was going to completely he was going to cave this kid's head in. Not that he was going to do it. There's no ifs, ands, or buts. He was going to cave this kid's head in. And it all started because he accidentally bumped into him. It was a crowded hallway, and he was at his locker room, and he accidentally bumped into him, and that set him off. It set him off. And he threw this kid down on the ground and beating him, and then taking his foot and stomping. And me and another teacher ran, and I grabbed him from the back, and the other teacher grabbed his legs, and we had to throw him to the ground because he was going to kill him. There was no if. I mean, he stomped this kid's head in, and he raised up, and he was going to stomp again. He was going to kill him. And when we asked him, why did you do this? You could have killed him. You could have killed him. He shouldn't have bumped into me. In his mind, it didn't get it. He didn't understand. He truly did not understand. He thought it was completely justifiable. And that was frightening to me. That when I saw that, that was an eye-opener. That was a real eye-opener. And that's actually when I came out of the seminary. So when I came out of the seminary, the seminary is structured, it's prayerful, it's quiet, it's controlled, it's calm. So I come from that environment into pure hell. It was a culture shock for me. I never, ever anticipated ever seeing kids walking down the hall screaming and cursing and saying really terrible sexual things. I mean, this was in middle school. I was in shock. And people say that a lot. No, folks, I truly was in shock. It was like walking into a third world country. And I talked to the principals. I don't know if I can do this. This is crazy. I mean, this is nuts. I mean, it was a different world. A different world. And you're right, nature versus nurture, yeah. So it was just a strange situation. But yeah, he truly believed that he was justified. And had he actually murdered him, if there were no teachers around, I don't think he would not have felt bad at all. No, he would not have felt bad. He had no empathy, none. No, zero empathy. And it's this kid ended up killing someone when he was 21. It's terrible. But yeah, it's scary. It's a scary thing. It really is. Well, but see, that's the thing with they're not showing remorse. So how does God forgive them? Again, I think if they don't show remorse, there is some psychological damage there. It's not giving an excuse. It is explaining or trying to understand the behavior. See, you're not able to understand it any more than I am because we can't understand insanity. So I don't understand insanity. I don't get it. I can't empathize with insanity because the idea of hurting someone, that doesn't even, there would be no way. But these people that doesn't click in their brain. It doesn't click. So, what are you going to do? I don't know. It's terrible, but we certainly do hope, and I pray that everybody goes to God and asks for forgiveness. So, well, yeah, his home life was terrible. His home life, he was beaten. Many times he would come to school starving. I mean, very hungry. Clothes were disheveled, not clean. I mean, his mom obviously was not taken care of at all. She had been in and out of prison and addicted to drugs, and they had taken him in and out of the home and put him right back into the home. It was just, well, look, no. We cannot say who's going to heaven or hell. That is not our place. Nope, that is not our place. Anybody who tells you that someone is going to hell, they need to realize that they are not God. And the only spirit, the only being that can determine who goes to heaven or hell is God. Now, we can say the act is evil. No doubt about it. We have every right to say the act is evil. But we don't have a right to say is that person is in hell. We don't have that right. Okay. I'm glad you got that, Jennifer. I'm glad you got out of that, Jennifer Bailey. Okay. By the way, for those of you, this is by Ashley Eberhardt. If you're in Colorado, Cripple Creek, Colorado, it's a pretty cool place. Paranormal conference to be held in Cripple Creek. So ghosts, aliens, and Bigfoot, oh my. These and many otherworldly beings will be the topic of an upcoming paranormal conference in Cripple Creek, Colorado. The Pikes Peak Paranormal Conference will be held May 19th through the 21st at the Cripple Creek Victor School facility in Cripple Creek. If you're there, organizers said the conference will have a variety of class speakers, world-class speakers, hands-on classes, and an evening outings for attendees to experience. And all begins with a Fright Day Film Fest on Friday, as well as speaker meet and greet dinner. Saturday's schedule is filled with speakers and classes during the day and 3 types of outings for participants to explore. Paranormal investigations, Bigfoot hunt, or UFO skywatch. You know, Bigfoot would be fun, but with my luck, I'd be out in the Colorado Rocky Mountains, thinking that I'm seeing a Bigfoot, and then this big old gigantic 10-foot bear stands up and says, "Oh, by the way, your supper." That would be my luck. That I'm telling you, that would be like, yeah, I see Bigfoot. I see no, Bishop Long. That's not a Bigfoot. That's a bear. You know, that's it. But it's interesting. Well, I mean, I understand a lady says that there's no such things. Here's the deal. I get why you say that, but let me just throw this at you. There have been, and hear me out, for those of you who say Bigfoot doesn't exist, then you need to explain to me this. There have been, on record, game wardens from the state of Alaska who have said on many television shows and even speaking engagements that they absolutely saw a Bigfoot. Now, folks, listen to me very carefully. You may have an opinion on Bigfoot, but it's based on what? An opinion. These are game wardens in Alaska. Now, people say, well, they saw a moose. They saw a bear. Okay. If you're a game warden in Alaska and you don't know the difference between a Bigfoot and a bear, you probably shouldn't be a game warden in Alaska. I'm just saying. These people know the woods very well. They grew up in the woods. And so there have been many people, and they have nothing to gain. They have nothing to gain for going and telling people they saw a Bigfoot. As a matter of fact, then people make fun of them. But they are so convinced that what they saw was Bigfoot. You can't dismiss that. And you're right. Michael says Native Americans have said that they were there for thousands of years. So I don't know. There's a lot of things that we can't find. People say, well, why can't we find their bones? Do you realize bones fossilize? And not only that, but there's an argument that the possibility is that they could, in fact, bury their dead. People say, oh, they don't. There have been animals that have buried the dead. The National Geographic has documented this. So the idea that animals do not bury the dead is incorrect. So again, just because we don't, and do you realize how big Alaska is? We have not explored every single space in Alaska. So to dismiss it and just say, no, I don't believe it just because you haven't seen one. That's argumentum ad ignorantium, Latin, argument from ignorance. In other words, just because I've not seen, excuse me, just because I haven't seen one, they don't exist. I haven't seen Bigfoot exist. I haven't seen Bigfoot, therefore they don't exist. No, just because you haven't seen one doesn't mean they don't exist. So, I don't know. Well, again, how come nobody sees Bigfoot crossing a road like bear does? Well, and these are all great questions. However, we do have foot cast that investigators have discovered. You know what? I'm going to get a professional, an actual Bigfoot professional. That's one of the shows that I'm working on. It's a Bigfoot. I mean, this guy is straightforward, no nonsense, highly intelligent. He's been in the field. There have been casts that have been found and discovered, footprint cast, where they actually took it to doctors who work on feet. They know. I don't know the actual term of the name of the doctor, but they actually looked at these casts and they made it very clear these are not man-made. These are impossible to make them. So if some people can dismiss them and say, no, it just doesn't exist. I disagree. I think there is something out there. And so what it is, I don't know. I don't know. But people say, well, we see bears cross the roads all the time. Okay, but you're comparing a different species. Could it be possible that if there are Bigfoots, that they're actually intelligent? That they purposely avoid human interaction? I mean, so we just simply don't know. Yes, podiatrist. There we go. Thank you very much. I'm naturally blind. So there we go. Yeah. Again, I've had the opportunity at a paranormal conference. I spoke to a game warden from Alaska, and he looked me right in the eye and he said, listen, I'm not here. I'm not making money off this. I'm not selling a book. I'm not charging for my lectures. Everything I have to lose. But I can't deny what I saw. And he was adamant. So people say, well, he just saw a moose. Well, that's a passing of judgment. That's basically calling him stupid. I mean, it really is. And that's kind of offensive. I mean, he's a game warden. He's been a game warden for over 25 years. Again, you know the difference between a moose and a bear. And something that's bipedal and something that walks, obviously, quickly. Some people don't agree with it, and that's fine. But I'll do a presentation on that one day. I'm working on that. I am working on that. So anyway, for those of you who want to go to this paranormal location in Colorado, well, it's going to be there for you. And so there we go. And there have been, and bears can climb, sure. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, who knows? Who knows what they are? We just simply don't know. Here's the question that I have for you. I knew Lorraine Warren. I did not know Ed. He had passed before I got to meet Lorraine. But here's a question that was actually written by Aya Tinzaris. And the question is, how does Ed and Lorraine's daughter feel about her parents' bizarre paranormal lifestyle? It's a really good question. So the Conjuring franchise made a ton of money. Fictionizes the lives and paranormal investigators Ed and Lorraine Warren with her daughter, Judy Spera, has some thoughts about having such a unique family. Now, why Patrick Wilson and Vera Farmiga play the Warrens in the horror franchise, McKenna Grace plays young Judy Warren. In the 2019 movie, Annabelle Comes Home. The Annabelle doll actually exists, which makes the movie even seem scarier. Well, Lorraine Warren passed away in April 2019, and Ed Warren several years earlier in 2006. And their daughter, Judy Spera, if you want to look her up, Spera, has given a few interviews about her parents. So what is Judy's real opinion of her parents, Ed and Lorraine Warren? Well, there have been allegations against Ed Warren, and in 2020, Ed and Lorraine's daughter, Judy Spera, was part of the documentary called The Devil's Road, the true story of Ed and Lorraine Warren. The focus was on her own life and what she thinks about her parents. It's hard to know how it really feel to be a young child, realizing that their parents checked out ghosts in people's houses for a living. and would definitely be pretty terrifying at times, the author says. And from what is shown in the Conjuring movies, the Warrens believe that there are evil ghosts and demons and that other people might not be aware of. So Judy Spera talked about her parents in an interview with Den of Geek and explained that she actually stayed with her grandparents a lot of the time, as Ed and Lorraine Warren would go all over in order to help people and do their jobs. Spera said that she was fine with what her mom and dad devoted their lives to. She explained that they had creative careers as well. And it wasn't all about hunting ghosts, which people don't know in people's houses. This is interesting and might not sound something that people know about the Warrens, since based on what is shown is all about paranormal. But Spera told Den of Geek, quote, "I never wanted them to stop. And when I was quite small, they were artists, and that's what they did. They traveled and sold their paintings and did art classes. It wasn't until I was getting older, when the ghost thing happened as a little child, I didn't know that they were doing that. I knew that they were always interested." Spera also said that it was enjoyable being Ed and Lorraine's daughter because of the way that they went all out on October 31st. She said in an interview with Den of Geek, quote, "My father always talked about ghost stories in my family, so he had fantastic Halloween parties, and my father would make these witches and things and paint them. It was fun," she said, "and we spent a lot of time walking around in cemeteries, which I still enjoy doing." Now, Judy Spera admitted that as a kid, she was afraid of the supernatural things that her parents dealt with, and that she knew that they were right. And she told Den of Geek that as I got older, I could see proof of it, or proof enough for me. So if you guys want to check her out, again, it's Judy. You can go to the website, Tony Spera. That's TONY Spera, SPERA.com. And you can learn more about the New England Society of Psychic Research. Tony runs that after the death of Ed and Lorraine. And by the way, the Warrens family also had a museum that's been shut down now. So, but Tony Spera, that is what you can check out, TonySpera.com. Yeah, you're right. Ed did a lot of paintings and what he saw. So anyway, it's interesting. I know there's a lot of people who debate and want to attack Ed and Lorraine and all this other stuff, but I just don't like attacking people. It's just not. Anytime people attack another person, I just like, you know what, that's unnecessary. Let's not go there. You know, it's not necessary. It's just not. Okay. One second. Okay. Yeah, he continues to work. Henry Lee Lucas. I don't know a whole lot about Henry Lee Lucas. I know that he was a serial killer. He's a convicted serial killer, and I believe, if I remember, it was maybe 10 to 12 people. I can't remember. It's been such a long time ago that I read about him. I think it was like 10 to 12 people that he killed. I know he killed his mom, and there were a couple others. I think that was in the 1960s. I think he killed his mom. So yeah, it's terrible. Of course, he confessed. Now this is an alleged. I know he confessed to 600 other murders. So, but that's not been validated. But yeah, Henry Lee Lucas is his name. So, okay, please don't spam. Please don't spam. Okay. If you're going to spam, if you're going to advertise, then you need to ask, because I don't think that's very kind. Not that I'll be more than happy. Well, but yeah, it is, because I don't. I'll be very happy to advertise for anybody, but I just ask that people ask first. So, Spamming is, for example, they say, "Hey, have you ever heard of this? Have you ever heard of this podcast? What's on tonight? Make sure you tune in tonight," or something of this nature. That's not cool. Again, I'll advertise for anybody. I have no problem with that. I just, out of courtesy, because I don't do that to anybody else. I don't go to anybody's live show and say, visit bishopjameslong.com. I don't ever do that. Never. Nor would I, because it's rude. So it's always respectful to go to the person and say, "Hey, do you mind, can you advertise for this podcast?" 9 times out of 10, I'll say, yeah, unless of course you're saying something that you shouldn't say. But it's just very disrespectful. Excuse me. It's very disrespectful to go on and advertise for someone's podcast show or live show without at least going to the person who's doing a live show. I mean, it's just courtesy. It's just courtesy. That's it. Again, I've never done that in my entire life. I've never gone to anybody's show and said, "Make sure you visit my website, bishopjameslong.com." Never done that. Never. So I get it. I get it. Okay. First of all, my name is not Dude. If you're going to refer to me, you're going to refer to me as Bishop James Long or Bishop, but I'm not your dude. Okay. Some people are very rude. Very, very rude. Yeah, just why would you do that? Just so disrespectful. So disrespectful. Anyway. Okay, yeah, right. All right. By the way, for those of you, one of upstate New York's scariest legends, it's featured. No, he's blocked. I blocked him. I'm not going to be referred to as Dude. I'm no one's dude. At least you don't have to respect me as a person, but you will respect the episcopacy. And that's something that I don't allow anyone. I don't care who it is. I have friends that are atheists. I have a friend that's a Satanist. I have a friend who's a Satanist. I have friends from all walks of life. But my Satanist friend will call me Bishop out of respect for the episcopacy. He may not agree with it, and that's fine. But out of respect, he does. And I will not allow someone to disrespect me. Not going to do it. Okay. No, you wouldn't actually. That's a good question. You wouldn't call a priest, bishop, father. So you would call a priest either reverend or father. A deacon, you can call them reverend or deacon. But a bishop, you would either call them your grace, your excellency, or a bishop. So that's in the Catholic faith, but certainly not dude. I'm not going to have someone come in and call me dude. I'm no one's dude. Okay. I know. I'm very conservative when it comes to that, and I will admit that. But again, just like if you were a reverend or if you were a bishop in your religion, I'd call you bishop, or I'd call you reverend, or Okay. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that. Okay. No. We don't have cardinals in the old Catholic Church. Nope. So, but actually, in the Roman Catholic Church, of course, you have the papacy, and then, of course, you have cardinals. Although there are people who think they're cardinals in the old Catholic Church, which is quite odd and absurd. We don't have cardinals. Yeah, there's a lot of people. I just don't think there's a lot of people who think that everything is a demon, and I just don't agree with that. I've talked about that before. I have been in the paranormal community for 35 years. 35 years is the first time that I investigated. My God, even saying it doesn't sound right. But 35, you'd not call your mother dude. No, I would, believe me, I would not call my mom a dude. No. No, that would not happen. But I have, I do not know, Michael. No. But I don't, I have not found that everything is demonic. I just haven't. And so for me, I've investigated a lot of locations, and people say everything is demonic, and it's just simply not. It's not the case. So what we do is, my first paranormal experience was actually when I was very young. Well, not very young, but anyway, I went to Waverly Hills with a buddy of mine 35 years ago. And that, at that time, it was abandoned. Well, thank you very much, Seamus. It was abandoned. And because it was an abandoned place, and actually the owner, way back 35 years ago, did not care if people went up to Waverly Hills. And actually, they wanted people to go to Waverly Hills and tear it up, because the owner actually wanted to tear it down and build a huge Jesus statue. So he didn't care. I mean, anybody would go up there. It was dangerous too. You got to be careful. That was my first paranormal experience, where I went there, and we went into the open, I guess it was a cafeteria. I guess that's where it was. And I remember seeing paper everywhere from patients. And there was, medical equipment all over the place. There was a wheelchair lying on the side, and we heard a little, to me, it sounded like a little girl, a little kid crying. So we went upstairs, and where Waverly Hills is huge, it's just big place, and it's echoey. You can hear it. And so down the hallway, it sounded like there was we thought maybe a kid got caught in there and got lost. So we walked further down to the bathroom, and it was like a horror movie. The whimpering got louder. I opened the first stall, and no one was there. I opened the second stall, nothing was there. And just as I was about to open the third stall, like I've said, I've told this story before, it was like someone took a sledgehammer and hit. And this was the metal. These were the metal walls. I guess you could say I don't know what the term is, but they hit it as hard as they could. And it shook. I mean, the whole thing just shook. We took off. I mean, we ran so fast. And that was an eye opener. That was a huge eye opener for me. It was certainly not, it was unexpected. It was very, very terrifying. We weren't expecting that. See, shadow people, the thing is, there's a huge debate with shadow people, a huge debate. People always say, well, shadow people are all demons. I have not found that to be true. I just haven't. Now, there have been cases that I've worked where it was demonic, and I saw shadow people, and it was very heavy. It was very oppressive, and it was very demonic. No doubt about it. But then I've also been in locations where I've seen shadow people, and it was not violent at all. I've been to Waverly Hills many, many times, and I've seen shadow people so many times, and I never felt threatened. Not once. Now, there were a couple of times that I was there that I was like, oh, this is a little uncomfortable. But the times that I saw the shadow people, I never felt threatened. So I've been to upstate New York. It's beautiful. Absolutely gorgeous. Mm-hmm. It is. It's amethyst. Doppelgangers are interesting. I'm going to do a presentation. I got to do more research on it, because there are absolutely people who are convinced that doppelgangers exist. Matter of fact, when I first came on, when I was doing TikTok, it was rude. People, the trolls, but they were, it's Paul Bart. It's Paul Bart, the mall cop. Quite honestly, I don't think I look like Paul Bart, or whatever the actor's name is. I just we just simply don't know how many people there. So I forgot his name. There's a lot of things when we're talking about shadow people. I mean, people have experienced shadow people where they felt overwhelmed, stressed. They felt like it was demonic. They felt like it was human. Man, it's an interesting situation. It's an interesting situation. Yeah, Kevin James. There we go. Kevin James. Well, haunted location is one thing, but when you're walking into a demonic case, you especially a demonic place, there's a lot of people now calling themselves exorcists and demonologists. And I think if they truly walked into a demonic, I think if they truly walked into a demonic infested home or building, I think perhaps they would rethink being involved. because if you're not prepared for it, it'll change your life. Again, I don't know. We don't know. You asked the question about the Old Catholic Church. We don't know how many people, because each bishop has their own jurisdiction. So we simply don't know. Within the Roman Catholic Church, each parish submits their information to how many parishioners they have to the diocese. The diocese then reports that to the archdiocese. The archdiocese reports that to the Vatican. So we simply don't know, because each jurisdiction is different. Can you talk about an experience that you've had with a demon? Well, Old Catholic Church is international. It's not just, it started in 1120. I mean, that's when the Roman Catholic Church branched away from the Old Catholic Church. There have been a lot of places that I've been to, homes that I've been to that were demonically infested. They had the smells, they had the religious objects desecrated. As a matter of fact, I went to one location. Bishop David Price was with me, and the investigators there were with me as well. We were doing the minor rite of exorcism on a home that was very violent. As a matter of fact, they bought an item from, I think it was New Orleans, and it was I'll have to show it one day. I showed it before. And they bought these items, and they brought it home, and the activity was starting to get crazy in their house. I mean, it was violent in their home. And the religious objects, they had a cross thrown on the ground, and it shattered. They put a picture of Jesus up there, and it's like someone had just taken it and just shattered it on the ground. But we went there, and I had a little crucifix that kind of stood up. It's one of those wooden crucifix where you can take it out and put it on the stand. And then you have two little small tea lights on the base. So the arms of the crucifix were pretty high. So the base was about like this. I'd say a good 10 inches, at least. And I still have this. And when we were there, we began doing the minor rite of exorcism. And then one of the investigators said, "Bishop, turn around, the cross." And I turned around, and the cross was on fire. The tea light, and this was a tea light now, a tea light. The flame went from here, and the top, I think the arm, to here. It was like a torch. And it made me mad, because this was like from the 1940s cross. It was a beautiful, beautiful sick call cross. It's basically a sick call cross they used to bring with them. And it caught fire. And that was very intense. So someone at the time possessed or something like that during an investigation. I have had cases before where people have claimed to be possessed when they go in investigation. But see, that you got to understand, when I get involved with a case, the investigation has already been done. So we have had a team. They went in there, they investigated the claims, and after they investigated the claims, then I determine what needs to happen next. So by the time I get involved, I already know. I already know what we're going to do. And that's when it gets violent. And so I tell people, if you're a paranormal investigator and you work a legitimate claim that's a demonic, then I make sure people, okay, thank you, Mr. Producer. I make sure people know, if you're going to go with me, then you need to know the consequences for this, because there's no backing out. Once you've done this, there's no backing out. And they're aware, because I make sure everybody's fully aware of the dangers that lie therein. So, but when I get involved, it's usually that there's a demonic infestation, there's a poltergeist, or it's possession, or it could be oppression. So that's when I get involved. Well, I get involved when it's heavy, when it's demonic, and we actually have evidence to show it, not because there's a little bangings in the wall or because someone thinks they feel the demon. That's not good enough for me. That's not good enough for me. We have to have clear evidence with either EVPs or objects being desecrated, the smell of sulfur. There's other things that we look for to determine if it's a valid case, because I can't go to every single case. I just can't. So that's how we do it. So for those, I'm going to stay on TikTok for a little bit while afterwards. But for those of you who are on Spreaker, I'm going to say goodnight to you guys. I want to remind everybody, remember that tonight at 10 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, we will have night prayer. So please stop by. We'd love to have you. It's night prayer at 10 p.m. Eastern. All you got to do is just simply go to bishopjameslong.com. Scroll all the way down. And there you go. Well, Joanne, how can you protect yourself? Well, honestly, here's the best way to protect yourself. Don't go into those locations. That is the best way to protect yourself. Don't. But if you choose to, you understand that you're jumping in the ocean with sharks, with predators. And there are consequences for getting involved working in demonic cases. And I tell paranormal investigators that all the time. Folks, I want to remind everybody that your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. Remember, Facebook, YouTube, Twitter, and everybody else. Don't let anybody tell you you're worthless. Don't let anybody tell you that God doesn't love you, because your value does not decrease based on someone's inability or refusal to see your worth. You are priceless. Facebook, YouTube, and Twitter. God bless. The Sacred Division has been brought to you by Bishop Long's online paranormal course. Learn demonology, angelology, paranormal studies, and genealogy. It's 100% online, and you learn at your own pace. Please go to www.bishopjameslong.com and click on the paranormal course link.